Daybreak show continues on here. The Sheriff Sit Down, presented by our community credit union. Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury is here today. Morning, Casey.
Good morning.
Good to talk with you, and some exciting times happening at the county commission meetings to talk about. We are very unique in Mason County. We have only one incorporated city, but the city of Shelton is surrounded by two tribes, and there is a lot of partnerships that have kind of evolved over the last many years. And it's led up to a signature that happened yesterday.
It actually happened this morning.
All right, tell me more.
At the commissioners' meeting. But Jeff, tribes are sovereign nations, technically. It's like dealing with a whole other country, and people don't oftentimes realize that because we're neighbors. And many years ago, when I first came to Thurston County, this evolved. I'll give you the history of how it evolved. I started working here, and the way in which we spoke on the radio, the process, was different than everybody else, and I made mention that I wanted to change that so that Mason County was not the only agency in the state broadcasting the way that we did.
And you're talking about not radio like what we're doing.
No, I'm talking about on the police radio, the procedure involved. And so as I brought that up, the then chief of the Squaxin Island Police Department came to me and asked me about the possibility of the tribal agency being able to broadcast on the same frequency, and I didn't realize that they weren't. The problem with that is the tribe had an incident occurring right along 101 out there on the highway. It wasn't coming over our frequency, and we'd have to switch back and forth. And so it just was that way, and it's still that way in most of the agencies across the country. So we adopted with the tribe to change that and put the tribe on our radio frequency. And if they would broadcast with the new procedure the way I was proposing, and it was adopted then by Chief Dick Knight, Terry Davenport, and I were the head of communications at that time. That was a big deal. The idea was that Chief Evans and I talked about that if there's an incident occurring right there at 101 on tribal property, off tribal property, armed robbery, whatever it might be, you know, we're ground level police officers. We want the bad behavior to stop, and it really didn't matter to us. It was a tribal person, non-tribal person, on tribal land or off tribal land. The behavior of the violent individual needs to be stopped, and that we would start working towards a process in which we work together, which was unlike any other tribe and any other non-tribal law enforcement in the country. So as we moved through that, we changed the radio frequency. I started having meetings, or had my first meeting, bringing all the agencies together in the area to sit down and talk about things. And we formed that at the then Burgermaster. We had so many people show up that the tribe made the offer to let us have that monthly breakfast, which is now called the Sheriff's Law Enforcement Breakfast, on tribal property if the tribes could be involved, which they became involved with us. And so for 15 years we've been doing that. The memo of understanding that we got together with the tribes is that they decided they would have all their people attend the Washington State Law Academy in addition to the Federal Academy, in hopes that we could cross commission so that on or off tribal property we could be on one team together. And we were one of the first in the country to ever do that. And so that brought together so many things for us by cross-commissioning that other places in the country were astounded that tribal and non-tribal agencies could do this. One of the philosophies that Chief Evans and I at the time had was there are a lot of things in Indian country law that are different than non-tribal law. However, there's many, many more things that we're alike and that we work together on. So we made the decision that we would take all the things that we can work on together and work on those, and we'd figure out the rest of it later, but we'd start working together. Hence started this partnership, which has ended up for us, I've listed a few of the things here, not only cross-commissioning, but we have, over the years, we've gone to radio frequencies together, trained together for different types of training. We had members of the Squaxin Island Police Department on our SWAT team, which was unheard of. We had a special operations group that was a drug unit at the time, that we had tribal members on that, unheard of, across the country. And we had a Crimes Against Children task force in which the tribe participated together with us. Search and rescue, worked on Marine Patrol together. And so there were so many things that we could come together on that never been done across the country, that Chief Evans and I were asked to do a national conference in Green Bay, Wisconsin quite a few years ago.
But Casey, this is all within the last 15 years.
Right.
So, I mean, up until then, we're talking 2005. How across the country have none of this been pushed forth?
A lot of it still hasn't. And the other thing that came about during that first or second year that Mike Evans and I approached, that the tribal agencies be a part of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. They were always separated out. And that year, Mike made the proposal. I seconded it as a sheriff, and we moved forward. And it didn't pass by a whole lot, but it passed among the chiefs and sheriffs of the state of Washington that the tribes would be part of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs.
So leading up to these,
It's been a long time in the coming.
have there been scenarios where you have had to pursue somebody and then basically stop because they've entered into tribal land before this agreement?
In some areas, yes, and there's problematic because you have to determine on some of these. Indian country law is very complicated. I had an expert come out and speak at our morning breakfast, a lady named Pamela Leginsky. Is considered an expert in Indian country law, and her first words when she gave the presentation on the legal thing, she says, some people might consider me an expert. She said, the truth is there is no expert in Indian country law. And apparently there are some places in the country where Indian country law is not written.
Wow.
So there's some challenges with that. So Pam did the presentation on that. We started bringing this together, and I'll tell you, it has been a fantastic team effort. You know, you have one city and us, and now the tribes are included on that. But you have to look at, there are some things about tribal land and non-tribal land on crimes, and if the person is a non-tribal member, if they're a tribal member. And are they on tribal lands at the time they committed something, or are they on public lands? Is it a member of the tribe off the tribe that we're dealing with, or a member of the tribe on the tribe, or is it a non-tribal member off the tribe or on the tribe? That changes everything.
Sure.
So what this amendment did today, Jeff, to make a long story longer, what it did today was we needed to update this.
Okay.
And it was noted in the Memo of Understanding. It says the tribe of Mason County have for well over a decade cooperated to their mutual advantage in accomplishing the goals and seek to review the relationship in a written agreement. And the agreement was that we both, all our goal was to make sure no matter what, if you're on tribal property or not on tribal property, that we were working together to keep people safe in our community. That was our overall objective, just to make sure we're keeping people safe. And we had agreed with that. So recently, after well over a decade, most people have never done this, or most agencies, there was a few changes in the law that changed, again, in Indian country and in non-tribal property. And so there was an agreement made with the prosecutor, our office, and the tribes that when you're investigating the crime and you're going to file that for a charge on that individual, whomever it may be, that the prosecutor of the county and the tribal's attorney will sit down and look at that, and they decide of which jurisdiction that will be tried in, because there's separate courts when you're a sovereign nation, and the prosecutor and the tribe will make that determination. All the law enforcement agencies wanted to do was make sure people were safe. There were some changes, but this morning the prosecutors reviewed this. This morning I briefed the Board of County Commissioners, and again, for well over a decade we've been doing this, and the Board of County Commissioners, they have not signed it yet, but agreed this morning that we would continue with that cooperative effort with our tribes.
That's very exciting, and continued on with these partnerships. You and I have talked, and I and Chief Beeson from Shelton Police have talked, that this is a really kind of unknown moving forward in law enforcement with some changes here in the state, but to know you've got some more backing with the tribes here in Mason County, it's pretty exciting, and exciting that everybody has been able to work through this with such a history. I mean, imagining that it's only been 15 years since some of these have come into place. The Sheriff Sit Down is presented by our Community Credit Union, and it's always great to talk with Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury.
Thank you.